Today I've got a bit of an update about how my November went and my plans for December. So let's dive right in. The November book pick was Tarot for Creativity by Jessa Crispin, and I have to be 100% honest with you, I have not started it yet. Life, as it tends to, got in the way a little bit in November, but I'm excited to start diving into it soon for the month of December. So I guess just a little insight. I will be reading this for December, especially after hearing so much about how this book blends tarot with creative practice. I've seen this recommended and I'm genuinely excited to see what it holds in store. Next up, let's talk about my card of the month for November, which was guidance. And since the last time I checked in, which was the last month's wrap up and intentions video, I've been reflecting a lot on guidance. I have done my homework working with this card. I went ahead and I looked up the definition for guidance. I also took a look at the card and picked out some symbols that I took note of. So the symbols in this card that I picked were angel, wings, clouds, mountains, and water. I wrote a lot about it here, jotted down what keywords and what other things that they can symbolize. And then I jotted down some questions surrounding guidance that I could have journaled with or dug deeper into or helped me to create a tarot spread. And I did do just that. I did a guidance spread. It was quite a beefy spread, as you can see. It was 7-card spread with an oracle pull. I thought a lot about this spread and was very intentional about creating it. And it was very, very deep. I don't know if I was expecting it to go this deep, but I guess I shouldn't have any expectations when doing a reading. You never know what can kind of come forward at the time. But I did post about this spread on my Instagram. And yes, by the way, I do have an Instagram. You can follow me there. My handle is SimplyHanTarot. I do have it linked in my description of my YouTube channel as well, so you can easily click there. I'll have it in the description of this video as well. So if you're not following me, which maybe you aren't because it is a brand new Instagram account, go ahead and do so. We're gonna have some fun on there. But I created a nicer visual of the layout and the prompts. Let me know if you're interested in that, if you've done a reading similar in the past, but I really wanted to connect to guidance this month. The biggest lesson that I took away from guidance is that I tend to only seek my guides when I feel I need them. I wrote about it a little bit here. The first question is, how do I receive guidance? And I pulled the 7 of Swords with a 10 of Wands clarifier. And I seek guidance or my guides in moments of duress, basically. When I am feeling weary, hopeless, or lost, I tend to seek them. However, what they wanted to let me know is that they're there for me during every moment. It's not just when I recognize that I need them. They're there all the time. And I should seek their counsel a little bit more often than when I'm feeling in a dark spot or lost. Just know that if you are similar or you can relate to that, we can connect to and with our guides at any point in time. It just isn't during hard times. Now let's pull our card for December, and it's going to be the last pull here for 2024 with this deck. I am doing and preparing for my year ahead preparations, and I'll be doing a video on that. And part of that preparation is choosing next year's monthly oracle card deck for these monthly pulls. Anywho, let's shuffle the cards and see what we get for December, what message we get for December. What is the message theme for December? Okay. So we have 2 here. We have empower and empathy. So this will definitely be interesting. I've never had 2 cards pop out for a monthly oracle card pull. So let's see what empathy and empower want us to think about this month. And it's interesting how both of these cards feature 2 figures. Both start with an EMP. Very cool. Okay. First up, we have empathy. To encourage understanding and softness in one's relationships, to put oneself in the other's shoes and respond with compassion, A being in need of compassion is embraced by another who's draped in a red cloak symbolizing love, warmth, and an open heart. You don't have to agree in order to care. You don't have to understand in order to accept. Open your heart and mind to the experience of others and watch how the world that surrounds you softens. No matter your race, gender identity, sexual orientation, and/or personal beliefs, we all return to the roots. In the words of Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. The mantra here is, I treat the people in my life with empathy and understanding. Wow, that was so beautiful. The parts that stood out to me were, you don't have to agree in order to care. And the quote here, we're all just walking each other home. I think sometimes that can be hard to forget, especially as we live our day-to-day lives. Things are so rapid and fast now. And when there comes a time when we're not getting along or we're butting heads with the ones we love, it can be hard to remember that we're all in this together. Let's read for Empower. So we have consecutive cards here. To find opportunities to encourage or enable others to reach their aspirations. To encourage self-empowerment and consider when others have empowered oneself. Ooh, consider when others have empowered oneself. Interesting. Two beings exchange a lightning bolt, a symbol of immense natural celestial power. There will undoubtedly be times when you don't feel centered in your magic and power. But those times will be few and far between when you're surrounded by an aligned support system. Your strength doesn't need to rely on anyone outside yourself, but encouragement from like-hearted individuals has the ability to catapult your aspirations to new heights. Keep the energy exchange flowing fluidly by acknowledging and encouraging the power you see in others. My power is amplified by the support of those who genuinely see me. Whew. I think, as you could tell, the consider when others have empowered oneself really stood out to me, which also ties into this mantra down here, that we are amplified by the support of those who see us. So this will be an interesting month for the theme with the Oracle. I'll have to really sit down and think about how to work with both of these energies this month and how I can kind of organize that. Okay, now let's talk about the decks that I worked with in November. I kept things a little bit simpler this month, but here are the ones I used. I'm going to start with the one I used probably the most was the JK Tarot. This was a newer acquisition for me in the month of November, so it kind of figures that it was heavy with the use. I was super interested in using it, getting to know it. While it is an RWS clone, that doesn't mean that it's going to have the same vibe that my Centennial deck has. But this was my go-to for pretty much almost everything. There was just something about the energy of the deck that I kept coming back to. I love the colors in this. I love the organization of it. I don't know. I just really found myself gravitating towards this deck this month, and I was really happy to get to know it a little bit better. So that is the JK Tarot. The next deck that I used most often was the Fantasy Garden Tarot, and I used this deck for actually two major spreads this month. I used it for my November month ahead, which gave me a very profound insight into something that was going to occur this month and helped me be more mentally prepared for it, which I am so thankful for. I think otherwise I would have handled the situation very differently if I hadn't done this spread and with this deck. It's very insightful, it's very intuitive. It feels more like an introverted deck to me, which aligns more with my personality and how I relate to the world and interact with the world. So it was very spot on for that. And then I also did a personal reading regarding a particular situation that had been on my mind, and it provided some real clarity for me. So this was a true companion this month as far as providing some clarity, giving me guidance, and heeding that guidance and not knowing kind of what I would have done without it. So that is the Fantasy Garden Tarot. And for the third month in a row now, we have Tarot of the Crystal World. I have not set this one aside just yet, but it wasn't as present as it had been in the other months, I think because I really gave time and space to work with the JK Tarot. But just know that I continued working with this deck a lot, and I used it mostly for my daily draws or smaller readings. It's really calming and connected to the energy of the earth, despite its bold colors, and being grounded is something that I always need. So this was definitely a nice addition to my November decks that I used. tarot of the crystal world. The next two decks I started using toward the end of the month, and the first one I have here is Daydreaming in C2. I think I mentioned this in my 5 fall decks, I believe. This feels like a November fall kind of deck to me because the days are starting to get shorter, the light is starting to disappear much sooner in the day, and especially in the Northeast. It's really interesting because I have relatives that have lived in other states within the South. My family member who lives there has commented before that it doesn't get dark in Georgia at 4 or 5 o'clock. It's actually around 6 or 7. And even though we're in the same time zone and you can draw a line straight down the coast to Georgia from New York State, it's so interesting how vastly different the times of the sun setting is. But anyway, this deck reminds me of that transition, that it's a pretty big transition into the darkness, and has a lot of depth to it. I love the collage style. I like how it's pieced together. It's almost abstract in a way. So we have a color story here. We have this grayish white for the sky, and it's using just the color cut up from different pieces or different visuals, and all of them aren't necessarily of a sky. And when they are, they can be sideways or what have you. So it's just a really beautiful representation of how I think of and visualize November, especially again if you are in the United States when it's finally time to turn back for daylight saving a whole hour. It can really kind of mess with your internal clock, and it makes the transition a little tough. So I feel like this deck kind of fits that mood a lot. But anyway, that is Daydreaming in C2. And the final deck that I used in November, again, similar to Daydreaming in C2, I started using this at the very end of November, and that is the Majestic Earth Tarot. This deck is still one of my favorites. It was one of my favorites before I even owned this deck, and I feel so very grateful to have come across a copy. And I've used it and alongside Daydreaming in C2, actually. I paired them together. So that was really interesting, and there's so much to look at in both of them, but I don't know, it just kind of worked, and I really liked it. Again, it connects me to that beautiful grounding energy, and I look forward to using it more. So that is the Majestic Earth Tarot. Now let's move on to the decks that I intend to use in December. I'm planning to shift gears a little bit. The first thing I'm going to, or want to use, or I'm drawn to use, is the Uncommon Tarot. This deck is really stunning, and I feel like it's very, very well suited to exploring in December. All of the images are a little bit on the darker side, like as far as exposure. I feel like there's a lot of depth to the colors. Of course, we have some outlier cards here as I speak about it, but it makes me like pull it up close to my face and really take a good look at all of the symbols in the cards. I don't know, I just felt like it fit a really good energy that I'm feeling drawn to for December. So that is the Uncommon Tarot. The next deck that I am feeling drawn to work with, and it might not make sense for December, but it's the Vetti Tarot. I don't know what it is about this, because normally I think people would categorize this as a spring deck, but it feels wintry to me, and I can't put my foot on it really. Although I would use this in the springtime, but for some reason it just is calling to me now. And I don't know, I'm here for it. I'm gonna answer its call. I want to dive into it more and see what messages come through. And that's why I don't like to always be so seasonal with my decks, because obviously this is bright and it feels springy. It has a lot of flowers in it, a lot of fauna in it. The colors are pretty vibrant, but it just feels like it has something to tell me in the darker months. So I'm not going to ignore it. And I haven't really used this much since I've gotten it. I got it, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months ago now. I do have an unboxing. It was one of the first videos that I did on my channel, so I'll link it in the cards if you want to check it out. Yeah, so that is the Vetti Tarot. So the next one is Tarot de Carlotydes, and again, I feel like this is also very similar to the Vetti Tarot, where it might feel a little bit more springtime to others, but there's a muted quality to the colors, again, as all the bright pinks come out. But there's like a muted quality to the colors that I feel like fits very well to December. There's a magical quality as well, whimsical, and I don't know, it's just telling me to grab it and use it. I think it would be interesting to use this deck alongside the Vetti Tarot, which is really, it's like kind of interesting in a couple ways, because they, like I said, are categorized like you might say this is spring, but I'm being called to use them in the winter. And this one is like one of the smallest tarot decks that I own, and the Vetti Tarot is the largest tarot deck that I own. So I think the juxtaposition between the two, but the similar vibes in that I'm using spring decks in wintertime, would be really interesting to play around with. So yeah, I don't know, I just think that'll be a lot of fun. Tarot de Carlotydes. The next deck that I am feeling drawn to use in December is the Gill Tarot. And how perfect is this, the keyword reflection for, you know, December and winter and going in deeper. I haven't used this deck in a really long time. I have a very interesting relationship with this deck. I have tried to destash it from my collection multiple times, but it just won't let me. But it's just been feeling like it wants to be used, and I don't want to ignore it because, unfortunately, and this is kind of mean, but I feel like this deck is probably the most ignored deck in my collection, and in part to, again, how it has been put in the declutter pile multiple times. But every time I go to put it in that final, okay, I'm going to take my tote bag to XYZ today to, you know, let go of it or what have you, it won't let me. There's a message and a lesson that it really wants me to go in and use it for. And that's why I feel like I kind of ignore it, because I'm like, I don't know when the time will be. It's going to let me know, but it's not now. So I kind of just let it sit on my shelf. But for December, in part, I think I don't know, I just feel drawn to use it. So I'm going to try. And that is the Gill Tarot. And the final deck that I really want to work with, or intend to work with in December, is the Arcana Folia. I feel like this matches up to December really well, the color scheme. I recently got this in and I've been really wanting to use it a lot. And I think this would do well on its own as just like an oracle spread on its own. I do have a unboxing and first impressions of this deck up on my channel. I'll link it in the cards if you want to check it out. And in that video, I do explore some pairings that I think would go really well with this that I have in my collection. But I also think that it would be really fun to explore this deck with just itself. I don't know about you or if you can relate to this, but when I get a new oracle deck, I jump into automatically, oh, what's going to pair with it? And sometimes I think we owe the deck to just working with it on its own. Instead of doing a daily draw for my day with tarot, maybe I could do a daily draw with this deck. I don't know. I think that it's okay to just use oracle on its own. And I kind of want to give that a try a little bit more often in my practice. So that is the Arcana Folia Oracle. And the last little update I wanted to share with you all is that in November, I put a poll up on my community tab, and I asked which decks that you would like to see me do a deep dive study of with next year in 2025. I had 3 decks in mind, but only room for 2. And I asked my viewers to vote on which one was your least favorite. And with the exception of Sarah from Cedar Moon Witch here on YouTube, shout out to you, Sarah. It makes me chuckle still, but most of you voted out the Gill Tarot. Sarah was voting in the Gill Tarot, so I did take that into account. But I just wanted to show you, and I'll pop up maybe a screen share here, that the winning tarot decks to do deep dive studies on for 2025 are the Majestic Earth Tarot and Tarot by Mr. Freiborg. I'm really excited to work with both of these. I have a lot of organization and planning to do. I want to be very practical with my approach. I want to give myself a schedule and enough guidance to be able to conduct these 2 studies. I'm thinking that I want to dedicate 5 months to each deck, so it'll be quite an intensive time, but I didn't want this to feel rushed. I wanted to take my time with each deck. I wanted to do it where I still had some wiggle room as far as taking some breaks as well. I'm going to be doing a whole planning video on that, starting with the Majestic Earth. I'm going to start with that deck. And now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I wanted to work with the Gill Tarot in December because it was casted out. So I don't know, there you have it, I guess, for that. But that's all I have for today's update. I'd love to hear what decks you're working with in December and any books or tarot spreads that you're feeling called to try. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new here. Follow me on Instagram if you want to. And until next time, see you around.